but we are affected by this dilution of the value of the dollar by printing off vast numbers of dollars. So that's the first power that the Fed has right now. The second power is related to the idea that the Fed can change interest rates. So let's take another really simple example here. And let's look at a country that only has two industries right now, just for simplicity's sake. Let's say we've got, this is our baseline, let's say the interest rate is 3% right now. And we've got a steak industry that has a business cycle that looks like this. And we've got a hot dog industry that has a business cycle that looks like this. So notice how the curves are in, we're just assuming these are completely opposite business cycles. So the more money people have, the more they're going to buy steaks, and the less they're going to buy hot dogs. And the less money they have, the more hot dogs people are going to buy, and the less steaks they're going to buy. So there's a lot of industries out there that sort of work in opposite directions to each other. And with this example, let's say the Fed goes ahead and decides to set an interest rate. Let's say we're at this point in time, and the steak industry here on the black line is doing great, and the Fed decides to lower the interest rates for whatever reason they choose to lower these interest rates. Let's say they lower the interest rates to 2%. So now people are encouraged, since they can only get 2%, they're probably going to spend more money than they would if they could get 3% from their money, because if I can get 3% when I'm loaning money to somebody, then I'm more likely to make a personal loan, for example, to somebody at 3% than I am at 2%. So what happens is I spend that extra 1% on steaks. And what I've done is I've effectively shifted this steak curve to go up at this point in time, to where the steak industry is going to do 1% better based on this interest rate. So I've affected this here, and also effectively the hot dog industry is going to do 1% worse. In simple terms here. So for whatever reason that the rate changes were made, there's been a distortion where things have gotten more extreme. So let's just say, for example, now we're going to put all the industries in, and we've got a car industry, we've got other types of food, we've got clothing industries, we've got everything, sports equipment, we've got whatever people are buying in the world. Those industries all have natural curves, and those curves are going to be distorted based on the interest rates. So I guess the interesting question for me is there a moral stance to being able to do something like this? If I know I can distort the behavior and reward steak industry people and hurt people who are in the hot dog industry, that's a moral question. Should I be allowed to do that? Should the Fed be allowed to do that by setting interest rates? One of the trends we've seen is this housing bubble. So we've seen a trend where the Fed, for whatever reasons, has chosen certain interest rates, and it's turned out that that's favored the housing industry and created a huge distortion, let's say, of how many houses are being sold, and it's perhaps affected other industries in a negative way. So you know, a lot of guys building houses have done really well over the last several years until this whole bubble has burst, where people have realized, you know, there's just more houses than we need, and there's nobody out there to buy the houses anymore because the housing prices are way up, and there's been all this stimulation to build houses the way the interest rates have worked. So it's another interesting question. If you look at the overall economy, should the Fed be allowed to stimulate certain industries and not others, either directly or indirectly, with its policy? In a free market, the role of government is to provide an equal playing field for everybody, or a level playing field. So it raises the idea of fairness and whether or not the government should have created this Federal Reserve. So anyhow, I'd encourage you to follow this whole Audit the Fed bill that's being proposed right now. It'll be interesting to see whether we can actually audit this Federal Reserve and see where all this money is going that they've been printing up, these trillions of dollars lately. The other interesting thing about being able to print money is if we do indeed have a lot of overseas investments, loans that we have to pay off, then we're paying off those loans with interest. So there's a lot more money than the actual principal on these loans that we're getting from other countries. For example, probably some of it's going to support our war efforts overseas in the Middle East. So the response now to perhaps create a lot of money by printing it off so we can pay off these loans, and meanwhile we've got the inflation that I was talking about earlier. The American citizens are all going to be hit with a lot of inflation just so that we can pay off loans to other countries, and the interest, which is, you know, anybody who owns credit cards these days knows that interest can be a real burden on people. So we, the American citizens, have got a lot of money we're going to have to pay off, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not the Fed is really helping or hindering us if we're able to audit them and see exactly what they've done with all these trillions of dollars that they've printed off. So anyhow, hopefully this clears up a little bit of what the Fed can do and what they're all about. A lot of people think the Fed is a government agency, but it's not. It's actually a private bank that's given specific powers that no other bank has, no other private citizen or company has. So there are definitely some moral questions to be asked there, and we'll see what happens. All right, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.